So here's a 5 p.m. update on what is now Tropical Storm Beryl, but soon to become a hurricane again. Beryl has made its way across the Yucatan Peninsula today, not too far from exiting back to over the open waters of the Gulf. The track has shifted again today. We had a briefing just 6 hours ago, and the new guidance came in a little bit further north. So as you know, we've seen that shift north quite a bit in the last 24 to 30 hours. There has been a hurricane and storm surge watch that have been issued up to Sargent, Texas, along the Texas coast. Areas further up the coast may have watches later on. The onset of winds is just a bit later as you go further north, so there has been no watch decision made north of Sargent yet. In that hurricane watch area, winds to hurricane force possible, and in the storm surge watch area, storm surge values of 3 to 5 feet will be possible. As I said, additional watches may be issued farther up the coast with later advisories. For rainfall, we're now looking at 5 to 10 inches, locally up to 15 inches where the heaviest rain occurs, which will of course lead to a flood threat. And that'll be very dependent on the track of Beryl, which is still to be sort of fine-tuned. And then of course rip currents, elevated tides, and seas are likely even outside the watch areas. Here's a look at the latest forecast. Again, you see the location at 4 p.m. of Beryl right on the north coast of the Yucatan there, getting ready to head out over the Gulf. You can see the shift in the forecast north now forecast to come in to South Texas, maybe even the coastal bend area early Monday or during the day Monday. And then it tracks more north from there. Of course, this is a substantial shift from this morning and especially from yesterday morning. And we could see additional adjustments in track with later advisories. So even if you're not in the watch area now, just be sure to check in for updates. The timing of tropical storm force winds may be a shade later than we briefed this morning. Now looking at more likely later Sunday night or Monday morning. If you look at the wind probabilities, though, they have come up for areas like Matagorda Bay quite a bit, over 50% now. And that whole axis of higher probabilities, you can see how it has shifted north. We have pretty significant numbers really all the way up to Galveston Bay. Now we're looking at 20 to 40% as we get even up the coast. So really all of our coastal areas need to be alert for this wind threat and coastal flood threat, and a bit inland as well, of course, wherever that hurricane makes landfall. Here's a map at the storm total rainfall put together by the Weather Prediction Center. And what you see is a fairly broad area of 5 to 10 inches, but with some local amounts greater up to 15 inches. The map itself is more sort of an average, aerial average, showing a pretty solid area of 5 to 10. But again, as we often see with these, an excess of higher amounts, especially near and to the right of where this thing ends up tracking. Here's a look at the resultant flash flood threat. You can see on the left, again, a slight risk on Monday. And then Tuesday, again, a slight risk for the whole area in both cases. So Monday and Tuesday look to be the wettest days. And don't be surprised if we see a small portion of this upgraded to a moderate risk as we get closer. There's just a bit of uncertainty in where the heaviest band is. But once the forecast can sort of fix in on that, wouldn't be surprised to see a moderate risk on one of these days. Here's a look at the surge height. All those areas in yellow in a storm surge watch for peak surge values of 3 to 5 feet above ground level. Another reference there is above mean higher high water. This is sort of on par with some of the higher surge values we had with Alberto, but potentially even a bit higher than that, near where we have the hurricane coming in, near and to the right of the hurricane track. And I did want to also add, north of Sargent, there is a coastal flood watch for 2 to 4 feet above ground level. You can think of that more like around 5 feet above mean lower low water. Many of emergency managers use that mean lower low water reference. So I want to be careful about confusing the surge value with the value relative to mean lower low water. Don't get confused on that point. Question was asked this morning about the wave heights. A couple snapshots here. On the left, you can see a close-up of our coastal waters showing 10 to 15 feet, 10 to 15 foot seas, really from Freeport down the coast. With those highest values you see down closest to the hurricane. And then on the right, you see another snapshot. This would be Monday morning. And you can see even higher seas down there, even some 20-foot seas as we get closer to the hurricane. So if that storm does draw further north, as it very well may, the 10 to 15 foot seas we're showing here could be quite a bit higher even. And then at this point, I would like to invite Chad Gregory from the West Gulf RFC to unmute himself and talk about the river flood threat. So go ahead, Chad.
All right, thanks, Dan. Yes, so here at the RFC, we don't focus too much on the track of the storm. We're always looking at the forecast rainfall, which, as Dan mentioned, has increased farther eastwards this afternoon towards the Houston area over the next 7 days. So we're definitely expecting rises on area rivers. At this point, I would say we could definitely expect action stage and minor anywhere across the area, with moderate or greater river flooding for those areas that receive isolated higher amounts. It'll just depend where it ends up, whether it's closer to the coast or if it goes farther north, it could even affect as far north as the Navasota River below Lake Limestone. We're always in communication with the local reservoir operators to include any information from them in our official river forecasts. But as a reminder, our official river forecasts only include the next 24 hours of forecast precipitation. So you won't see any official river forecasts until this event gets closer. But up until that point, we're continuing to watch the forecast rainfall and messaging. Rises expected on the rivers, impacts expected, but those worst areas are still uncertain and will depend on where those heaviest rainfall amounts set up. So with that, I will pass it back to Dan and stand by.
All right, thank you, Chad. So just to sum up, the track forecast for Beryl has continued to shift northward today. We do have a hurricane watch for areas south of Sargent, so be especially alert for Matagorda, Jackson County seem to be closest to where this storm is likely to track, likely making landfall again as a hurricane as we get into early Monday. Hurricane force winds and storm surge of 3 to 5 feet will be possible in the watch areas, perhaps 2 to 4 feet further north. So we could have coastal flooding really anywhere, but the greatest threat is going to be again down the coast based on the latest track. Additional watches may be issued farther north up the coast with later advisories, and stay tuned for updates. Like I said, the track can shift a little bit here and there, and that can put other counties more in the crosshairs. So stay tuned to the updates as we go through today, through the weekend. Rainfall amounts of 5 to 10 inches are expected, local amounts of 15 inches where the heaviest rain falls. And of course, rip currents, we have a holiday weekend, rip currents, elevated tides and seas are likely. The rip current threat will be there even well in advance of the storm. And then just a brief mention of the confidence. This isn't meant to, cause you to kind of wait for a higher confidence. It's more intended to understand that there could be other areas even outside the watch where this storm could end up tracking. We will have the next briefing by email at 11. Tomorrow we'll start at least 2 a day briefings like we did today. We may do an evening briefing as well. And so I'm going to